How important is it to be able to read music? Do you really need to learn to read music? Or is it enough to play piano by ear or by rote? The short answer is that if you wish to make the most of your ability, you do need to be able to read music. But once you grasp a couple of basic points, it's actually much easier than you might think. And in fact, reading music is really far easier than playing by ear. At the outset, it's only fair to acknowledge that reading music is a significant obstacle for many learners. This is especially the case for the piano learners, since we need to read different clefs. We need to coordinate both hands, and we need to play so many notes and rhythms at once. And trust me, I get it. My childhood attempt to learn the piano was curtailed when the teacher literally fired me because I couldn't read music. It wasn't until my late teens that I started in earnest and discovered my love for classical music. So if you're intimidated by reading music, you're probably expecting way too much of yourself. You see, reading music is not the same thing as sight reading, and odds are you're conflating the two. And that's likely what's causing unrealistic expectations. To grasp why this is the case, we need to understand what sheet music, also called a score, represents. Sheet music is really nothing more than a set of written instructions for which notes to play when, and to some extent how. And that's it. There are two main aspects to a musical score: pitch and rhythm. Pitch is which note to play, which of these keys on the keyboard, and rhythm is when to play it. And that's really the gist of it. Now, true, there are other symbols too. There are plenty of them, such as dynamics like loud and soft. There are articulation symbols, in other words, how long to hold a note relative to its written value. But all of these are secondary considerations. When you read music, you're decoding it. You're recognizing the symbols and converting them into sound. And there's no obligation to do so in real time. That is sight reading. So sight reading involves recognizing all of the symbols that are meant to be played at any given time, recognizing them simultaneously, playing them on your instrument, and keeping in time, keeping the rhythm. And this is a very tall order. It requires fluency in all of the other aspects of reading music, recognizing the notes and rhythms while also playing expressively. But to learn a piece of written music, you certainly don't need to be able to sight read it. All you need to do is decode the score. You just need to understand the instructions. Take as much time as you need. The instructions will be something like this. Start on the C above middle C. Play it with the right thumb. Hold it for 2 beats. So 1, 2. And now play the E above it with the middle finger. Hold it for 1 beat, 3. And then play the G above that with the pinky. And hold it for 1 beat. That would be beat 4. And so on. That's decoding a piece of music. In the beginning stages of learning, there's no need to sight read. You certainly shouldn't expect yourself to be able to do so before you've gotten a handle on all of the component skills of sight reading. So the solution is to work on each skill separately. Just start with learning to recognize the note names on the different clefs. Piano music uses bass and treble clefs, and learn to recite notes on these staves independently of rhythm and independently of an instrument. Strive to be able to recite them about as easily as you're able to name the letters in a page of text. So for example, if I look at the top line here, eventually I could learn to recognize C, E, G, B, C, D, C, and I'm not even paying attention to the rhythm. I'm just looking at the note names. Only once you're able to do that, then it makes sense to consider playing the notes on an instrument. So on the piano, you can practice finding those notes on the keyboard. And again, independently of any rhythm. So you could practice finding C. We don't care at this point about which finger you use. We're just finding the notes. Then finding an E, and then a G, B, C, D, C. Now, as for rhythm, you can work on that separately at first, and you really should. So learn to count out loud and to tap or clap in time. So don't worry about trying to do so at the piano while playing the right notes. That's simply too much for the initial stages. So you just forget about the keyboard and focus on recognizing the note values and keeping musical time. So for example, here eventually you'll learn that this is in 4. Each measure is in 4. And you'll learn like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So you'll learn that over time. And as you develop each skill individually, you can eventually try putting them together. And since you'll already have experience reading notes and keeping musical time separately, then it won't be as overwhelming as it would be if you tried putting all these multiple skills together before developing any one of those skills. So let's give that a try. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then now it's starting to sound like a piece of music. Now, if you become really skilled at reading music, the ultimate stage in developing this skill is playing what's called Prima Vista, and this is what famous musicians, including Mozart and Franz Liszt, were able to do. Prima Vista means being able to realize a musical score with full expression at sight, even if you've never heard or seen the music before. If you were playing Prima Vista, then you just look at this for the first time and then just focus on each skill, one by one and little by little. Learn to decode a written piece of music so that you can encode it into your memory and fingers. Remember that sight reading is a different skill from reading music, in that sight reading starts where reading music leaves off. You don't need to be a virtuoso sight reader to be good enough at reading music to learn most any piece of sheet music. And whenever you're ready, you can learn to sight read on your instrument by doing simple exercises and very gradually building your skill set. Happy practicing.